Well, hello again, and welcome to Wrestling Beyond the Pulpit with the Good News Gang. My name is Pastor Matt West, and I serve at Marble Memorial UMC in Milan. And I'm joined by my tag team partners, Pastor Curtis Clark from Marysville UMC, Pastor Kim Metzer from Hope UMC in Hastings, Pastor Matt Osborne from Ishpeming Wesley, all the way up in the Upper Peninsula. And last but not least, Pastor Jackie Ranieri. I can spit it out. Yes, Pastor Jackie Ranieri from Clare UMC. Oh man, a little rusty, I guess. But anyhow, we are back, and we are appreciative of those of you who are watching, so that you can see what it is that we're wrestling with. But today, we're actually going to be wrestling with a topic that affects all churches across our country. And so we're referencing an article in which we've all read, and it's titled 10 Things Churches Stopped During Lockdowns That We Don't Need to Restart, and 6 That We Need to Do. So we're going to make this kind of a 2-part show in terms of we're not going to go through all of them today, but we're going to start off and go through a few of them today. And then next week we'll finish off that list. So we're going to begin with the We No Longer Need. And I guess I'm going to hand it off to one of my partners here to see which one we're going to hit up first. So who would like to take the helm here and lead us in the first item on the list?
Kim.
Okay, I guess I'm going. But first, I wanted to give a shout out to the author of the article, because we should always give credit where credit is due. And I probably won't pronounce his name correctly, but it was Karl with a K, Vaters, Vaters. And I don't know a lot about Karl. I don't know anything about Karl, but we thank him for writing this.
What a great article.
Great article. So thank you, Karl. So I will go ahead and list the first 6, and then we can just start with number 1. How's that? Would that work?
That'll work.
Okay, so we no longer need printed bulletins, in-person only services, outdated programs, pastors' office hours, a crowded meeting calendar, and stand and greet time.
Dun, dun, dun.
So we'll start with printed bulletins. So I will be honest, and I have gone back to the printed bulletins. I did not initially, but on Easter, because I was praying for more people to join us, I wanted something that they could take with them. So I have returned to doing printed bulletins, but simplified. So I don't know. People seem to like them, but my partner in crime here in Hastings, Bryce, they've started posting their bulletin. They call it a program on their Facebook page, so that those that join online can also see their program. So that has value. What about the rest of you? Thoughts?
We still do one. I would eventually like to go to not have to print one. It obviously will take some tweaking. I mean, obviously everything that we do now is on our screen, as far as all the song lyrics, any liturgy, things like that. We do include in our bulletin like a take-home tear-off that has like some questions for reflection from the message, and then opportunities for a daily prayer, and then some information on the back, for upcoming events, things like that. But again, those can all be something that could be printed off and left for people to grab and go on their way out.
Right.
And so I think, as for me personally, in our context, as we continue with our update in our sanctuary, eventually, I think we will go to a paperless worship service. I think 2, because it's also it's cost saving from paper point of view, but also I want to have the person who's doing that weekly. I want to have her do things that are more geared towards ministry than that.
Yep. And I do it for my churches. So yeah, I would rather focus on ministry. Right now it is part of our ministry, getting people back into being the church that has gone away. Yeah. We don't need it for service order because it's the same and it's pretty easy to follow as a visitor. So
I was doing a little something.
you're doing a little
And
something.
I know my brother Curtis understands that I was probably doing it with a purpose. So on one hand, before I explain why I was doing that, I apologize. It's great that you guys can rewind and watch that again because it wasn't meant to be disrespectful. But this is exactly what happens when we print out bulletins and hand them at the church.
Yeah.
When someone's talking and saying valuable things, people can't stop looking at this. And then they miss things, important things. And then we have to waste an awful lot of time saying them again. And now they're disrupting people around them and passing those things around when we're actually in worship. We've begun worship and you're still looking at one of these. That's going to be my main reason why I get rid of it. If you focus on me or whoever it is that's leading this portion of worship, they're going to tell you what's happening. And I think if something's important enough, if it's truly a ministry of the church, then it no longer becomes an announcement. It becomes part of how we're going to live out our mission and work and something that's important about how the body of Christ is going to serve the kingdom or be in fellowship. So it shouldn't just be, here's an announcement. Here should be, this is why we're doing this fellowship gathering together today. It's not just a potluck at 7. Here's an opportunity finally after a year of not getting together that we're going to sit around a meal and we're going to remember what it feels like to be in community. See how that's different? But you need to listen to what I'm saying. I think it's a matter of resource. Maybe it's a little, maybe it's a lot, but I still think that bulletins, by and large, from my perspective, are a wasted resource. I think that anybody who's leading the service is going to be able to walk you through that. You know what's also the worst? What happens if, and I'm just going to pick on you, Jackie, Pastor Jackie, what happens if you're supposed to give a mission update before the second hymn? And what happens if you're not here? Or if something happened this week, all of a sudden now people are looking ahead to this thing that's happening here and not being fully in the moment. Right.
And so they let you know afterwards because they just stopped listening.
Yeah, and we lose that. And I think especially if you're going to take the time to type out what would be a bulletin, you post it online and there you go. Or you send it to a big email. And so everybody's got it before the thing happens. And if they think it's valuable enough, then they should print it out and bring it home. Now, before you tell me that some people don't have a printer, hold on, before you tell me somebody doesn't have a printer, you have a friend that has a printer. If they love you, then they'll print it out and bring it to you, and they'll probably sit next to you. It's just a moment where the bulletin is not essential for service. It could be something that adds to, but you can do it a lot more if you just trust the person leading worship to invite you along to what's next. If you're anticipating something, you might miss what's happening in the moment.
And I agree with all of that. And I like how Curtis is moving towards a takeaway that they pick up on their way out. And I think that's what I'm going to go towards that. We might be able to do this whole thing on printed bulletins instead of 6. But what I was going to say is not the printer issue, because that's not really a barrier. People look at stuff on their phones, and I would rather for that. But where I serve, there's a lot of people that don't have internet. Serve 2 older congregations that they just don't have it. So they need the print. So that's where I think the good segue is something that they can take with them, not something that they need in service.
I concur, because I'm with Matt in the fact that I think they're a distraction. I mean, I've been in my appointment almost a year now, and we haven't had a bulletin the entire time that I've been here. So I don't see, if we've made it this long with one, without one, why do we need it?
And you're back in person too, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I agree with the viewpoint of like grabbing something as you go out the door. And to me, really, that's, the more important piece of any bulletin or program is just the information in terms of maybe what's going on this next week at the church or an upcoming event, not so much the order of worship, because to me,
Right.
the distraction becomes then it's like a checklist, like, okay, we did this, how much more is left of service, as opposed to focusing on what Matt was saying, the important stuff, the message. It's like, oh, okay, we got to the message. Here's the long part. How much longer service going to be? Oh, good. We only got 2 more songs after this that maybe I can still get out of here in time to beat the church rush to the restaurant or what, So I think the information part, as far as the ongoing of the church, is important, but in terms of, knowing what's going on in service, like it's been said, I mean, you're doing essentially the same thing every week. Why do you need a piece of paper that tells you what's going on when you know, unless, obviously for guests, they don't know, but for those that are regular attenders, it's like, what's going to happen. So why do you need that piece of paper in front of you to tell you? Exactly.
So I would, I still do a service order, which is a separate program, and I send it to the praise team. Right. Yep. And to the pianist at the other church. But other than that, nobody really needs to know the songs, because at my main church, they're all on the screen. Right. And so.
But I came from a church that we didn't have a bulletin. We had a weekly information sheet. Sometimes it was answer, we changed it up every week. So if there was a lot of questions during the week, like what was going on, I did a little from the pastor's page or whatever. But then we had questions to think on and just, so it was more like a newsletter. It was just one side, then the other side. And, if we didn't have much to say, it was filled with pictures and prayers and, pray about this or whatever. I mean, we filled it up that way, which was great. And we had a great response from that. So then I come here and we do have the printed bulletin. But my problem is, I agree. I do we really need this thing every single week? But the issues I'm having is tech issues where I come in and the screens aren't working. We don't have pews. We don't have Bibles or hymnals in the pews, and everybody's like, I don't know that song. What do you mean? So we sing 2 songs a week, and we wear masks, so everybody knows we wear masks. Whatever. And I don't care what side you're on, but this is what we're doing in Claire. But it's just it causes a lot of issue. So we have to go along now, and we have to print out the scripture. We have to print out the words. And it's just, it seems like a waste of time in that. But I mean, there's been so many times we've gotten there and it's like, okay, we use that word pivot. Okay, let's come up with something else. And so I've been inserting a mini movie each week. And that a lot of my issues are tech issues. So it's kind of like, I go full expecting everything to work. And I get there and it's like something's not working. So I have to rely on, the bulletin. I have to rely on, so they can follow the bulletin. So the call to worship's in the bulletin. The words of the songs are in the bulletin. The, communion liturgies in the bulletin. The Lord's Prayer is in the bulletin. Everything's all there. So you're getting a little booklet each week. Is it a waste of time? Yes. Is it a waste of money? Yes. I agree with that. But until we can get some tech issues, that's the issue with it, and people, but Curtis, I like that idea because I got away from that from when I left downriver, that, asking those questions of what can you do? So now what do you do? Where do you go from here? And those are great. I mean, it's good. You could use it as a good resource page to do it.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah.
All right, my friends, we need to keep this conversation moving before bulletins consume our entire time.
Who knew?
I will offer this final thought. Maybe the emphasis should be on a technique that seems to be lost on a lot of people listening. So with that, let's move into the next one. Number 2 was in-person only services. Thoughts, comments?
100% agree.
Same.
I think we've all made that shift. We've all made that pivot. We've all seen the value in offering something online, whether it's a recorded or a live stream. We've seen how it's been able to connect us with people from either our community, our church who aren't in person, or new viewers or whatever. We've had people who winter out of state who are still connecting with us, friends and family out of state. And so there's absolutely no reason to stop live streaming or offering an online worship. Absolutely no reason at all.
But we're even
digital
getting
is-
people from different countries. I
Right.
mean, it isn't just
Right.
the United States. You're getting people from different countries that are, watching. And then they may not be watching it on Sunday morning, but they're watching it throughout the week and they're commenting and, or they're asking, can you please pray for our church? Or, so it's just been an interesting, what a way to disciple.
right. And digital will scale in the ways that physical just won't.
Right.
You only have so much building space, but unlimited digital space.
Well, the reality in what we've been reading as pastors too, beyond this article, is that the likelihood of the majority of people, well, I shouldn't say majority, but as far as everybody returning to in-person service when they feel like things are safe or we open things up 100% is not going to happen. So how do we continue to minister to those people if all we offer is in-person only services? And so we're all of us in this group are familiar with a particular book called From Social Media to Social Ministry, written by Nona Jones. And the analogy that she presents that I gave me a deeper understanding of what we're talking about is that it's no different than online shopping in the fact that, brick and mortar stores were like, no, they'll come because they want to touch it. They want to see it. And a lot of those stores have ended up having to close their doors because they failed to adapt. And so, I mean, why go to a store when I can just buy it online in the comfort of my own home? Well, church is becoming no different in the fact that, why do I need to go there when I can just watch it here in the comfort of my home?
But also, I think it adds a piece to where, how many years have we competed with sports? How many years has church competed with different activities, outside activities? But once you offer it online, a family can sit Monday night and watch the service together.
Right.
It doesn't have to be 10 o'clock Sunday morning or whatever time it is. They can watch it at their convenience, where I think people are liking that a little bit more, where they're not feeling that pressure of like, oh, I better be in those pews or.
Right.
Well, and by no means is the conversation that we're having saying like do away with in-person service, but it can't be the only thing that we offer.
Right.
Yep.
Well, we're putting a lot of effort in. I'm agreeing with this statement, but just to have a moment here is, we know we're putting a lot of effort and have put a lot of effort about getting our in-person services, functioning, changing, what boundaries or limitations we have, that we need to not just offer a virtual option, but we need to improve that presentation. Namely, we have to find someone, if we're going to sign up for greeters and all these other things, we got to have somebody online who's going to interact with that participation, to make sure that when we do things like that, to say, yes, it's a great opportunity to involve them in, hey, we sang really loud here. Since we can't hear your voices, throw a like or a heart or something like that. If this is one of your favorite new songs that we've introduced, or those kind of things. Do you have a prayer request? If you do the prayer request time in there, those kind of things, because you can just lift up those names. Hey, Brett lifted up to remember his family. It's a work situation. Angie said that this is going on some traveling mercies, just something that brings them a part of, you're not just here watching what we're doing. You're a part of our community of faith. You just happen to be wherever it is you are, whatever space. I know also there are people that are watching 2 or 3 church services a week. They weren't driving around, but they're at their church. They have an allegiance to like their one church, but they're enjoying other things. And one of the things that I heard some feedback too from my congregation, and this happened because all year we've sort of been connecting at different points, is when we do a sermon series together and we mention that, they find one of you that they're familiar with, that they've heard that somewhat familiar voice over a year, and listen to what your take was on the sermon. And so it's just very interesting that all of a sudden now that's almost like a Bible study is what I think. So some people that might not show up to a Wednesday Bible study, but they're clicking on this while they're getting dinner ready, or instead of watching Netflix, that's what building the kingdom looks like. Virtual is here to stay, but I also would suggest that we would, put out to those of our listeners, we have to double down and make it not just a luxury item, but, put effort into it like we would our in-person services.
I heard someone make, go ahead, Jack. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, add just a quick thing to what Matt just said. that, you mentioned Bible study. I mean, what a great way to connect those that are gathering and those that are watching online in a Bible study, offer a Zoom Bible study some night, or, take it deeper, conversation deeper type things. So that's what I wanted to add. It can work not only, as you said, as a luxury, but it can be an asset where in-house and virtual people are meeting online.
We've been hearing all along too, from whether it's church leaders or, industry experts, about that, churches should have already made the shift in their budget as well towards this new area of ministry. And that's how we have to look at it. Is it's a new area of ministry that's not going to go away. But I was having some conversation Monday night with a couple of other people around this issue of technology and how we were talking specifically in our district, how we can help with churches who are still struggling. And the one guy made the comment, he said, he was talking about the quality of that presentation, like Matt was talking about. He says, it's rare when someone might come into your church physically and get up and leave the service because it's just not doing it.
Right.
Because online, people do it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
He said so, and he was just making the point that, and we've all seen some real sketch looking services where, the sound is it's cruddy, the video's cruddy, and people aren't going to stay and put up with that. They're not going to watch it.
Right.
Well, therein lies the irony in the fact that people are upset with the quality of production, but then when you talk about needing to finance this ministry, it's like,
right.
Then the disgruntled hat comes on again, and it's like, what, you want to spend money on what now? Like, why do we need that? And it's like, well, all those comments where people are like, we can't hear you, or the sound's not good, or it keeps cutting in and out. Well, guess what? We can't do it for free.
Exactly.
It's going to require money to do so. I mean, it's no different than asking for money in person to do the ministry that we are in our buildings, know.
Right.
So yeah, I find it ironic, like I said, because it's like, oh, why isn't this better? I'm sitting at home wanting to watch this and it's not that good, but yet, well, then we gotta spend money to make it, better.
It's up to us as those leaders and pastors to really push for that. And if, we've been hearing all along again that if your church isn't doing it now, you're going to kind of be left behind.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's transition into the next item on the list. Yes, as Pastor Matt has shown us, number 3, outdated programs. Most churches are over-programmed, and most small churches are extremely so. So what do we feel about that particular item and doing away with it?
I think that there's a limited energy for us coming back, because I'm so excited for our in-person worship to get, further and further. And as people have started to come back, it's grown, you can see the new faces every week. I think we're still tired. Mm-hmm. I think we're excited, but we're still tired. It's like going to a birthday party after a long week at work. You're excited that your friends and family are there and you're getting your special cheesecake or whatever, but you're still pretty dog tired after a 50-hour work week. It's just like that. Excited to be here and excited for the church to kind of come out of the tomb and wipe the sleepies out and those kind of things. But we still can't do a lot because we only have so much resource and energy and get back to it. We only have so much commitment. Remember, people are just starting to come back to in-person worship services. We've yet to do much programming yet. So we're just starting to figure out, well, who do we have? What kind of commitments are these going to look like? I'm not interested in doing a lot of programming, period. Mm-hmm. But I'm also not interested in doing the things that they were fledgling and struggling before. That can't be part of the new DNA, because I think even a year from now, we're going to still have to pivot and adjust. It might not be such a big, wow steps, but we're still going to have to be really flexible and be used to plans being changed and altered for various different things.
Yep.
I just want to protect our people and say, we're going to do very few things. And the things that we're going to do are going to have a likelihood of succeeding.
Yep.
If it's something that was fledgling before, put an box in the attic. It's just, it can't come out right now.
Yep.
You don't have to bring it back just because you were doing it before.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's asking ourselves, why were we doing it in the first place?
Mhm.
Who was it serving?
You're
And
absolutely right.
Is that what you're going to say, Jackie?
Yep.
Oh, sorry.
Guess we all agree.
Well, then let's move
Number
on to
4.
the next one.
Thunder tastes really good. I'm glad I took all of yours.
So the next item on this list, number 4, was pastor office hours. Something that certainly has been, another transition in the church with, the fact that some of us stayed out of our buildings completely during shutdown, and then, realizing, like many businesses, that we can operate out of our homes and still do the same things. So I guess, the question is, do we actually physically need to be present in the office during set hours, or can we do what we need to, whether it be in our homes or, in a coffee shop or what, with, a cell phone and a laptop?
I think a lot of that depends on context. So my church is 2.5, 3 miles south of Hastings. It's in the middle of 8 acres. Nobody's stopping by. There's no reason for me to be there. Everybody has my cell phone. I can call in and get the church voicemail if I need to. We just don't have somebody in our office at all on a regular basis. And we didn't need to before, but it had been something that had always been done. There'd always been a secretary in there. So the pandemic was the perfect time to just nip it. I mean, why spend the utilities on that if, as we start, I hope to have our building used by more community groups, and yeah, there'll have to be somebody there to monitor, but that's completely different. Just to have somebody there to answer the phone, maybe? No. I don't know. I don't even like going in anymore because I'm just so used to not having to.
I think it's the office provides a common ground for, maybe an appointment or what, but
Right.
Physically being in the building all the time, or having, X amount of hours per week there when we could be doing other things, or being out in the community,
Yes.
is more valuable, whereas as I could, it's like, do I really sit here for 6 hours a day, Monday through Thursday or whatever, or Tuesday through Friday, waiting for somebody to make it worth my while? I mean,
come in. But don't come in. Don't.
well, yeah. And I mean, especially now, right now, people are like, well, do I come in? Do I, I don't want to go in, So yeah, I think it's one of those things that, what was the last one there? The outdated programs. I mean, I think pastor office hours is kind of, I don't know, for lack of better phrases, an archaic train of thought, that we have to be in, said office that was built years ago to properly pastor. I don't know.
Even my ministry assistant is offsite. So she comes in once a month.
Well, I think so much of this was labeled this way because when that process was put through, there were no cell phones. And sometimes even all homes didn't have a phone. So that was where you knew the pastor would be when you needed them.
Yes.
These things make me available. You can text me and call it Facebook, whatever, so I'm just thinking I'm actually more available than I was when we had office hours. And I can make myself more available, I guess, with less notice.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't have to be structured there in that place in that time, I can call you in my car 30 seconds after I drop my daughter off for school, where I wouldn't be ready in person and to go. So I'm actually more available for my congregants than I was before. But something that's also there, because again, we probably wouldn't have pastor's hours if we started the church right now, in 2021, it'd be different. But I also think, similar to a ministry that Pastor Curtis did, I would consider this office hours. But before the pandemic, when there was no, when we just didn't have these social boundaries, he was open at a time, I think like was like 45, 44 weeks a year, with different things going on, but pretty consistently you were at Tim Hortons for a couple hours. And it would be, initially there would be a group of men that got there and kind of had their breakfast sandwiches. And after a first half hour, 45 minutes, people would filter in and out, but it was time with the pastor, coffee with the pastor. I'm going to be here for 3 hours, from like 8 till noon or till 11 or something like that. I'm here, but I'm also getting my stuff done. I'm interacting with the community. If you need to stop by, this is where I'll be. I consider that like an office hours, but it wasn't at the church where nobody's coming, just like Pastor Kim said. It was, this is where I'll be, stop in and see things. And in a way, it kind of stimulates the economy too, because most people that come in there are going to buy a coffee and a donut or a muffin or something.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, I have the other flip of the coin though. So my church is in town. I know, look at me.
Yep.
So
but that's context.
Yep. Our church is busy. I mean, people are coming in and out all the time. Even when they weren't supposed to be there, they were there. And it was just, the secretary's there Monday through Friday kind of thing. But I can't get work done if I have so-called, office hours and that. I work from my home is quiet. It's me. I'm quiet. It's quiet here. So it's just that, it's quiet in the household where when I go in the office, it's like, I was there 3 hours yesterday and I had probably at least 8 to 10 people come in that just popped in and just want to see my face,
Right.
Yeah, they wanted to see me. But I was like,
of course they do.
Of course they do. But they, but they want to have conversation. And it's just kind of like, they're used to after 30 years with the, coming in or however many years it was, coming in and just walking into the office and just walking in and just start talking. So it's kind of like, I'll pop in 1 or 2 days a week. I don't announce my office hours, but I'm there because people are there so often. And it's like, I try to go on different days. So I get different, because some people have a routine of, I go to the office every Tuesday at 2:00 and I'll bring my offering in and see what's going on. And then I'll sit and I'll talk to the secretary, or I'll sit and talk, so it's just kind of like, I just pop in and out. I don't, I let the secretary know, hey, I'm going to be here. Here's my weekly schedule. Here's where I'm at. And then, expect me between this time or this time. And it, it isn't a so-called, it isn't on the building. It isn't in the bulletin. It's just, here I am, and I just make it, but I do the same thing. I'll go to the community buildings, but remember, a lot of our restaurants were closed for so long. Curtis knows that with this Tim Hortons that, I try to pop into different restaurants, either for lunch or for breakfast and just pop in just to kind of like, here I am. And I get to meet people through there. And, and actually I've had a couple people come to our church these last few weeks by saying, like, hey, I heard you guys had a new pastor. I heard she was over at, the Herrick House, or I heard she was over at Cups and Donuts, or I heard she was over at 505 and just wanted to come in and see what she was like. So, you get that. And it's just kind of, so I think we do need to have a presence at the church. Mm-hmm. And again, it is context, Kim, because it just depends where you're at. I'm in town, people are in and out. You're not. And it's kind of like people aren't in and out. So
so I go to Big B in State Street Diner where I'm having lunch today. And so we'll just start shouting out businesses. Sponsors, anyone? But
Jackie talks about a presence. I'm there every Sunday. How much more do you need?
I know.
The 1 day a week that you do work, right?
Right.
Right. And I do tend to hang out after. People are like, oh, aren't you getting ready to leave? I'm like, no, because that is the one time in my context that people are in the building. So I stick around.
All right, then. Well, let's move on to number 5. We've got 2 left here to discuss. Number 5, a crowded meeting calendar. I think we're all in agreement that we could do away with that one, but I'm interested to see if anybody's got anything to share about that.
If it's not about ministry, I don't want to have a meeting. So even our ad board, we meet every other month now. And on the intervening month, I send a newsletter update to the board because I don't want to meet if there's no reason to meet.
Right.
And there's not.
Amen.
Yep.
So last month we had 3 proposals to look at, and then one was kind of contentious. So we got more information on that. Then we had a real quick Zoom / in-person meeting to rectify it, and done. I'm just not going to meet for 2 hours for no reason.
I think it's where this is important for us as those who get to put people into leadership, get those people on those teams who are good communicators, who are good stewards of the resources, so that we can not have to be at every meeting, but we can follow up with that person and say, okay, just give me the 5-minute synopsis of what went on. What do I need to know? What happened?
Right.
So that we don't have to be there for that hour and a half, 2 hour meeting, because it's just a ministry killer.
Yep.
It's a momentum killer. But we still need to know what's going on, but we don't have to be at every meeting.
Right.
Sure.
One of the things I'm hoping to do is to transition to one night, like, although it may be each week, but those meetings being like all of our meetings being on Tuesdays or Thursdays, whatever, as opposed to Tuesday and Thursday there being a meeting, and because with some of the other community meetings or whatnot that I may be involved in, it's like, I don't want to fill my week up with meetings, and so it kind of, it may sound selfish, but in terms of our self-care and spending time with our families and whatnot, I mean, every time we have a meeting, it cuts into that, because my wife works a full-time job. And so evenings are when we get to spend time together, and if I've got a meeting every week, and every, 2 or 3 nights a week, well, then it means less time that I get to spend, with her.
Right.
One of the positive things that seems like it came out of this has been realizing, how do we keep the church going? Because the church didn't close down in 2020. It's just in-person things happen, but meetings still happened. We just didn't do the things that weren't necessary. We were all too busy doing things, and it took a big effort. So we weren't going to call everybody down unless we absolutely needed to, but ministry didn't stop. And so we've proven that we can communicate more effectively, but cut down less on the weeds and the stuff. Because if we're being honest, a third of our meetings didn't get started on time, or we went down rabbit trails, or we just sort of caught up and there were inside jokes, side conversations. When you get together on Zoom, yes, we laugh and joke a little bit, but it's, hey guys, we're going to get 15 minutes, what would have took us an hour in person, and we're going to be attentive to our families or wherever we're at 30 seconds after we close the meeting. It wasn't going to have to be driving in, driving out. We could eat while we were doing the meeting.
After the meeting,
yeah. So this is a time where I actually have more participation from my leadership and consistency, because I'm meeting less, we're getting down to business, and we're also freeing them up. Because if you're going to finance, you have to drive in after work, do all this. You're in an uncomfortable work outfit. If I say we're going to meet at 6, you might be finishing your lunch. You might have already changed into, some house clothes or something. We're getting more of your attention and your purpose than we are another meeting on the calendar. And I feel like we've proven we can do this in a very challenging, difficult year. Why would we go back to something that wasn't as efficient and wasted more time?
Mm-hmm.
I think the fine line we have to be careful or walk, per se, goes back to something Pastor Kim said, in that, is there a reason for us to meet? Because I sometimes have the feeling like there really isn't a reason other than we're getting together to socialize, because we haven't seen each other. And that's coming from an extrovert. Like, obviously I love seeing people, but there's also times where it's like, I've got other things I would like to do or need to do that I can't get to because we're meeting basically for the sake of, like, oh my gosh, it's, been a month since I've seen you, like, let's get together. And like, but then when you look at the actual meeting, it's like, well, we really didn't do anything that we needed to meet for, like nothing that an email couldn't have covered, or, could have waited till next month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think then too, those opportunities are great ways for us as pastors to bring in a visioning idea, even if it's, again, saying, the same thing we said last month, add to it, but kind of keep pushing that visioning idea, because that's really what we should be doing. We have a single board at Claire, and I know, we all have different, things at our own churches. But that's a big piece of it. And that's the part where I'm trying to get Claire to understand that we need to take that time to vision, even if it's once a month, and they're great about keeping it to an hour and we're out of here. So it's like, do what you got to do. But that should be a great time, no matter what meeting it is, for the pastor to say, here's a plan that I'd like to do. Here's a visioning piece of this. What do you all, and give people something that time to get together. Yes, I agree. A lot of meetings they drag you out. And I have 2 weeks that are full of meetings, and I have 2 weeks that are kind of lighter. But it's just that, but I think those are the times that we can take that opportunity as pastors to start visioning, start pushing, pushing people, pushing our leaders in there. Like, where do you want this to go? And putting in the why. The why is a big piece of it, I think.
And speaking of time, I propose that we do 6 next week, 6 through 10. We just split the list in half.
All righty. There you go.
Although number 7 could take a while, but
that might be its own week.
Yeah, so we might just do 6 and 7 next week. But yeah.
Pastor Kim's tired, so I guess that means it's time to sign off.
No, I just know that attention spans are short, and we're at like 40 minutes. So
yes. So anyway, I'm fine with that, and I'm sure the rest of us are. But before we wrap up this episode, any final thoughts that anybody wants to share before we say goodbye?
Just remember that Pastor Kim said that your attention spans are short and you can't handle another point. So we're going
And you can write to her at Pastor Kim at
PastorKimMetzer@gmail.com. I'm perfectly fine with
No, thank you guys for listening. It's a great time to gather us together and to have some conversation together. We hope that helps.
Yep, because it's been a while. So it's good.
Yes, it is good to be back. Well, we hope you appreciated what we wrestled with today, and we'll be back to wrestle with the rest of this list next week. And we hope that maybe it'll spark conversations within our own congregations, or feel free to talk to your pastor about what you heard today. But we'll be back next week to finish up this list, at least the things we can do away with or done away with during the pandemic, and we'll go from there. But until next time, peace be with you.